Hey, what's up guys? Thanks for stopping by the channel. So for this video, I just wanted to discuss my top 3 picks for Swiss dive watches that range from $500 all the way up to $5,000. So in this video, I selected 3 watches that I think represent each of those categories quite well. At the budget tier on the left here, I have my bronze Glycine Combat Sub. Dead center here, around the $2,000 price range, is the Oris Aquis. And then for the top tier $5,000 watch, you can't really go wrong with the most recent iteration of the Omega Seamaster Professional. Now for this video, I did select watches that were similar dimensions and have similar dive characteristics. So some common design language across dive watches you can expect is excellent water resistance, great legibility and lume. So stick around near the end of the video. I'm going to do a 3-way comparison lume shot, which is going to be amazing. All of these watches also have unidirectional elapsed time dive bezels, and they also have durable case materials. So very durable case construction, sapphire crystals, crown guards. The rest of it you would expect on a sports or dive watch model. Okay, let's get into it, and let's pick the Glycine Combat Sub to start as a budget offering. You can typically find these new for $500 and for significantly less on the used or gray market. Now for people who aren't familiar with the brand Glycine, they've been putting out watches in Switzerland since 1914. In particular, I think they're really well known for 2 different watch models. One is the Glycine Airman, which is a pilot's GMT watch, and the second is this guy here, the Combat Sub, which is their dive lineup, and you can find this in multiple colorways. You can get it on straps, you can get it on bracelets. This particular one has the maxi applied indices on the dial, and of course it is made of marine grade bronze. So what makes this a great pickup at around $500? I mean, really, the materials and the features you're getting are amazing. You're getting, as I mentioned, sapphire crystal. You're getting an automatic glycine caliber, I think it's GL024, but essentially that's a base ETA 2824-2 movement, which is Swiss made, has 25 joules, beats away at 4 Hertz, and you can hack and hand wind this movement, obviously. The bezel action is also really nice on this model. It's 120 clicks unidirectional, quite audible, but very positive detents, and very or no backplay really. The design of the Glycine case is also amazing. So this is a 42mm case, but flipping to the side, it has the thinnest profile for any dive watch I've ever owned. This is only about 10mm in thickness, and just look how those lugs just extend to drape down and hug your wrist. Now on the back you do have a closed screw down case back, and you just have some information about the watch, noting that it is 200 meters water resistant, automatic, and this version is in marine grade bronze, but of course you can also buy this model in 316L surgical stainless steel if you want to. So here's a quick wrist shot of a Glycine Combat Sub on my wrist, which is 19 centimeters in circumference, or about 7.5 inches for my friends that use the Imperial system in the US. Now at this price point, there are a number of different Swiss dive watch options. Some honorable mentions include brands like Tissot, Squale, Steinhardt, but I do find that just because of the variety of different Combat Sub models and the value for money proposition on this one coming in at a lower price than most of the ones I mentioned, you can't really go wrong with a Glycine Combat Sub at the $500 price point. Okay, so let's move into the mid-luxury price tier, and let's talk about the Oris Aquis. I actually think this is a bit of a Marmite watch. Some people really love it, some people don't like it. You do have a very original design of this watch, and Oris is actually an independent Swiss manufacturer, and they've been putting out watches since 1904. And I think because they maintain their independence, you get watches like this. You get the bold case shape, You get the integrated stainless steel bracelet, which is fantastic. One thing I will mention, and is kind of a negative I think for this price tier, is that you're essentially, for the automatic movement, you're getting the ETA 2824-2 equivalent, which is the Sellita SW200-1, which again, 26 joules, 4 hertz, hacking, hand wind, and about a 40-hour power reserve. Now in Oris's defense, I do think they had to go with the Sellita base movement because they're not part of larger corporations like the Swatch Group. It's very hard to source ETA movements. And that said, this automatic Sellita SW200 movement has been keeping excellent time. Anecdotally, it's picking up about 3 seconds a day on wrist. So the Oris Aquis is slightly larger. It's a 43mm case. It's slightly thicker, but it's about 12.5 millimeters in thickness, and then about 50 tip to tip here. But this does feel like a step up in overall quality for sure. If you're gonna go and spend over $1,000 on a Swiss diver, I don't think you can go wrong with the Oris Aquis. 300 meters water resistant, excellent lume and bezel action. This probably has the best bezel action out of all 3 watches that I picked up here. So go ahead and have a listen. So 120 clicks. The detents are very reassuring. Zero backplay whatsoever. And I just think the grip on this bezel is the best comparatively to the other 2 watches I'm talking about. Moreover, I didn't think I would enjoy this integrated bracelet, but it's very substantially built. I love how they finished the bracelet and case. You can see there's high polish on the outer portions of the bracelet, and then the center link is brushed. The center link is vented. And look how you can fold the links together. And with the integration, it just drapes completely over the watch. So it's very comfortable on wrist, despite its wrist presence. So here's a wrist shot of the Oris Aquis on my wrist. And again, I just think it wears extremely well. It feels incredibly built. Out of all 3 watches, I think this feels the most durable. And I'll just flip this watch over just so you can see. With Oris, you get the display case back. You got that iconic red rotor for all Oris models. And again, you can see that Oris actually brands this the caliber 733, but again, this is base Sellita movement, which I don't know how much they modify it, but they do have that custom red rotor there, and it does keep great time. And lastly, I want to mention some honorable mentions for alternatives to the Oris Aquis in this price tier. I think, Breitling puts out some great watches near this price point, the Cult or used Super Oceans. Okay, last but not least, we got to talk about the most iteration of the Omega Seamaster Professional. This is the 25th anniversary of the watch. They brought back the wave dial, and this is definitely a large upgrade with respect to materials and movement compared to the previous 2 offerings I talked about. You're getting a really amazing laser etched in ceramic dial, and you also have ceramic on the bezel. I think they color matched it perfectly. I love that they moved the date aperture from the 3 o'clock in the previous iteration, which I owned, to the 6 o'clock. There's a lot more symmetry now. This watch is 42 millimeters, similar to the Combat Sub. It is thicker though. It's about 13.5 millimeters, so it's the thickest of the watches I mentioned. 50 millimeters lug tip to lug tip, and you can see the finishing is amazing. You got those nice twisted lugs. Incredible detail on the dial with the applied indices as well. And then the bracelet finishing is spectacular with those mid-center polished transitions. And then you have a really robust clasp on the Seamaster Professional. With this class, you have a dive extension, like you did on the Oris, which I didn't show, but you also have the push incremental toolless adjustment on the clasp. So you can see if you push And you get incremental ratcheting micro adjust extension. And then you're also getting a significant upgrade with the Omega Caliber 8800 movement. So this is completely in-house. You can see the finishing on it is excellent. You have Geneva wave on the custom rotor and the bridges in an arabesque pattern. You have a free sprung balance. You have a silicone hairspring. So this watch is amagnetic. You can essentially stand beside an MRI and you will not magnetize the movement at all. 35 joules with a 55-hour power reserve, which is about 15 hours more than you're going to find on the Oris Aquis or the Glycine Combat Sub. Flipping the watch over, you can still see it has a traditional scalloped bezel like it did on previous Seamasters. And then of course you have the return of the helium escape valve at the 10. This time it's more pronounced and more conical in nature than in past iterations. My preference would be to do away with it and have the helium escape valve integrated into the case like you find on Breitling or Rolex, but I can see why they wanted to keep it, just to keep the iconic design of a Seamaster intact. Now bezel action is alright. It's very hard to grip with these scalloped edges in my opinion, but compared to past iterations, I do think it's easier to turn. The clicks are a little more positive, but if I'm being honest, I do think the bezel action is better on the Glycine and Oris. And here's a quick wrist shot of the Omega Seamaster Professional on my wrist. And I just love the overall fit and finish of this watch. I do think it's the most versatile with respect to casual wear, but you could also really dress this up if you want to. You know, you could probably pull this off in jeans and a t-shirt or with a fancy suit, just like James Bond did. If it's good enough for him, it's good enough for us casual watch nerds. Now, as far as competition in this price tier, I think honorable mentions include Tudor, like the equivalent Black Bay or the Pelagos, and you can probably find those for a little less right now. But aside from that, I do think that this Omega Seamaster Professional does stand out because you're just getting so much for the money. And I just love the detailing on the dial. With the ceramic wave pattern, it's like enamel. It's not going to fade or crack with time, and you just get outstanding and iconic design that maintains true to the original Seamaster, but also just bringing it up to date into the 21st century. Okay, and before I conclude this video, I will talk about the lume on all of these watches, and I'll throw up a low light shot now, because the lume on all of these timepieces is amazing in my opinion. Starting on the left, you can see that the Glycine Combat Sub uses what is superluminova, and I believe it's a 3-3 formula that glows very strongly. Even the date aperture at the 3 o'clock, the border of that has lume on it, which is a cool feature. In the center, the Oris Aquis has a really cool blue cobalt style lume. It's likely BGW9, and it's very long lasting. In fact, all of these lumes I would say last all night. And then lastly, we have the Omega Seamaster Professional 300, which in my opinion has the best application of lume just with respect to orientation. You can see there's actually a bi-lume application. It's got that cool blue lume on the majority of the watch, on the indices, as well as on the second and hour hand. But do note that the minute hand and the lume pip triangle at the 12 has green lume, and that does help with orientation, especially if you're going to use that dive time bezel. It's very easy in low light conditions to get orientation to the minute hand when you line it up to start your dive time. Alright guys, so that wraps up my top 3 Swiss divers from $500 to $5,000. I would love to know if you guys agree with me, or I would love to see your feedback on which 3 watches you would pick from this price tier. So make sure you leave a comment in the description of this video below, and as always, I'll catch you guys in the next video.